thanks for joining us.
Yeah,
So normally Paranormal New Zealand is heavily focused on the ghosts and that sort of side of thing, but
yeah,
we're all about the paranormal. So UFOs and abductions and that sort of thing and that sort of phenomenon is something that we're highly interested in. So we're really keen to hear your story. So
yeah.
I'll leave the floor to you, and I'll ask you a few questions along the way and maybe at the end. But basically, this is your chance to get your story out there.
Yeah, no worries. So yeah, I mean, thanks for taking the time to speak with me. And I've firstly, I'll say with my experience, and then my brother's experience, and then my mom's experience,
Okay.
because I can only speak from my point of view. They are not willing to come forward. They're not willing to talk to anyone about it at all. And so we're from like a working class, like middle class sort of people. So we don't like to speak about stuff like this would be, you know, pretty much be crucified for speaking about anything abnormal. So it's not something you hear every day. For me, so basically it was around the same time that I was picked up by a serial killer actually in New Zealand in the same month as this happened. Not that there's any correlation, but it was the same month that this happened. And I was in the paper and I was on TV for that and everything. And his name was Anthony Dixon. And so I was in a car for 10 minutes with this guy when I was 17. And it was about a year after arriving here in this country. Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that's pretty incredible. Not that that has anything to do with the main story. I just thought I'd mention that. Um, so in about in that same year, um, I was very young, and I've always been interested in paranormal stuff. My brother's the exact opposite. He's very like if you can't see it, it's not there. He's super level-headed, down-to-earth person. I'm like the opposite. I've always loved paranormal stuff. You know what I mean? And I've read it all. I've watched every documentary, everything.
Right.
And so I'm very familiar with the abduction phenomenon and with ghosts and everything. And for me, so I went to sleep that night like any other night, um, and I was lying there, and it was quite late. I couldn't fall asleep for some reason. I don't know why, but I couldn't fall asleep. And it got to probably, I'm going to say between midnight and the early hours of the morning. And suddenly my door like started creaking open. And it was just like in a horror movie. Like that creaking thing?
Yep.
It was like that. And it was very slow creaking open. And there was a slight, it wasn't a overwhelming light, but there was a slight light coming in from the crack in the door. And it's like like a body came in, and it had to like slightly duck to get under the door frame. So we're talking like 6'7", probably close to 7 foot. And I my first instinct, I said hello, but I'm not sure if any noise came out because I was in shock. So I just said like in my mind, I wanted to say hello because I mean, what do you say when someone enters your room? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think I said hello, but I don't know if anything came out, and there was no response. And this thing came in, and I couldn't make out the features because it was kind of silhouetted and the light coming from behind it. So all I could make out that it was very tall and very thin, and it was more of a silhouette, almost like a shadow person, I guess.
Okay.
And this thing came in, and I swear to God, I've never been more terrified in my life. I still have panic attacks. I'm a very anxious person. Um, I wasn't really prior to that. I still sleep with the lights, with the night light on, everything.
Okay.
Um, and it's been 20 years since then, and it's the most I've had near death experiences since then, and that was the most terrifying experience of my life. And
So sorry, it was just the one that came through.
yeah, so this is just so it's just the one being,
Yep.
and it basically it fully came in. It didn't close the door behind it or anything. It just came in. It kind of looked around my room, and at this point, I knew at this point that something was not right. So I pulled the covers up just to where my eyes and the top of my head was visible. So I pulled it up like this, and my heart at this point was going to explode, basically. And even just talking about it, it's just and this thing, it kind of didn't. It almost seemed like it didn't notice me. It kind of looked around my room, and it was more interested in my room, actually. It appeared than me. I don't know if it was aware that I was in the room. But then as soon as it turned its head and it made eye contact with me and it looked at me, that's when I knew I was going to have a heart attack. I believed in that moment I was going to have a full-on heart attack. And this thing took 2 steps towards me once it locked on me, and then it was morning, and then it was morning from that. And I believe that the creature, whatever it was, I believe that it knew if it had come close to me, I was going to die, because from the fear. So I don't know how I know that, but I believe that it knew that.
Okay.
And it sort of was merciful in that I just woke up and it was the next day. And I had no recollection of it. I only recalled it later on. I'm sorry, it's just freaking me out just even talking about it, man, to be honest.
Imagine, yeah. So how old do you think you would have been around that time?
I was about 17.
Okay.
Yeah. So and then so the next morning, I wouldn't have even mentioned it, to be honest. I would have just gone about my day. I really had no real recollection of it. Until the next morning, my brother sat down, we all having breakfast, and he said, I think something happened to me last night. And and as soon as he said that, I thought it came back to me a little bit, you know what I mean? And he said to me, I think something came in my room last night. And I didn't say my thing. I just was listening to him. And everyone was, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And he said, well, I think there was aliens came into my room. And this is coming from a person who, my brother's very high IQ. He's a member of Mensa. He has his master's in business. He used to work for Christopher Lux in 2015. So he's not. So just to give you an idea of what kind of person he is.
And very matter of fact to use the word aliens as well, right?
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and he doesn't have. He would always laugh at people who spoke about this kind of thing. I mean, to him it was just not even in his. He wouldn't entertain it for a second. And this is somebody who's very left brain thinking, and so he said, so we asked him to explain, and he said, so basically, I mean, he didn't elaborate the full thing, but over time he told me more about it, and so I can say that he was lying there similar to how I was, but in his case, his whole room lit up, like he described it like if a 4x4 like truck put its high beams on right in front of your sliding door where the curtains are, like just bam, and it was just like that. And that's how he described it. And it was that bright that his entire room was just bathed in light. and he he wasn't frozen from any external force. He was just frozen in fear. So he was like fight, flight, or freeze. He was just like frozen, and he this figure started to materialize. It didn't like open the door. It just kind of materialized. He's not sure if it came through the actual wall or if it just started appearing in his room. And this thing was a classic alien. I mean, it was a generic, big black eyes, large head. It was about the same height as the one that I saw. It was close to 7 foot. He said it was so thin that it wasn't anatomically possible for this thing to be able to walk around. I mean, he said it was like a pencil, like as thin as a pencil,
Yeah.
basically. And as soon as he saw that thing, he was so afraid that he was totally beside himself. And I'm sorry, I don't know why I'm feeling a little bit. I don't know what I'm feeling. I'm just shaking a bit, to be honest.
That's okay. Yep, just take your time.
And this thing came towards him, and he did the same thing I did. He said he pulled the covers up, and it came towards him, and then like two more figures appeared. He didn't know where they came from, and then after that, I think there were more that they were just coming in, and they all kind of were around his bed, and there were some that were shorter than others, and it got to the point where the main one was right in his face, like 2 inches from his face, just staring into his soul.
Yeah.
And he at that point he believes he lost consciousness, and but later on he recalled that he was actually escorted out of the house. He was kind of ushered out of his bed, where they kind of held his hands. He said they held his hands like children would hold your hands,
Yeah.
and they just casually, sort of in a very calm way, walked them out of the house. And the whole house was bathed in light at this point. And he then remembers going into the ship. The ship was this total ball of light. It was just pure energy. The ship, it wasn't like it made out of metal or like a football. It was just a ball of light. And he just walked towards the light, and he remembers being in a waiting room where there was other people in the waiting room, and he said that the other people were like very they were just like, they weren't afraid, they weren't normal. Like any rational person, you'd go like, what the hell am I doing here, you know what I mean, like what the hell's going on? But they weren't protesting it, they weren't upset about it. He said they were all, you might as well be checking his watch, I mean, there was like a dozen people in there, just like in a dentist's waiting room.
Yeah.
Yeah, very casual. He said there was some children there as well, and it's as if they were done it a million times. He at this point, he kind of resigned to his fate. He knew that he was somewhere. He wanted it to be over. He was very scared. He knew he wasn't dreaming, and he then recalls that when it got to his, other people before him were being ushered out of the room, but when it got to his turn, he knew it was his turn, and he was kind of called over, and then they went into, he believes at this point that the smaller ship had docked onto a larger ship, because when he when he went out there, it was huge. It was like he describes it as like 10 Sylvia Parks on
Yeah.
top of each other. That so it couldn't in his mind that couldn't fit into that small ball of light that they initially went into. So he believes that it must have docked onto a larger waiting sort of mothership, I guess, in his mind. And he he remembers looking up, and there was hundreds, if not like thousands, of people just casually wandering around, like a airport terminal. None of them were afraid, or it was just like a busy train station or something. And then he was walking with the alien through all this, and they put him in a room where he waited for some time, and this room was like a dentist's office, so it was very similar to. He believes now that they had programmed it to look like that, so that he wasn't afraid. He doesn't believe that's what it actually looked like. He thinks that it was some sort of simulation, and he believes that he has no way of knowing this, of course, but this is what he believes. And he believes that the train station and the shopping mall was also a simulation of some kind. So it was basically identical to a dentist's office and chair, and he was asked to lie down, and they looked in his eyes with a light very similar to how a doctor would, and told him to open his mouth, and looked in his mouth, um, put their finger on his wrist to check his pulse and things like that. They he said there was like little ones that were kind of in the room as well, like smaller, almost like 3 foot tall aliens as well. That would just seem to be kind of doing the labor work, I guess. They were just kind of shuffling around, and just he couldn't understand what they were doing. And nothing they did hurt. It didn't hurt or anything. He was just in total panic the whole time. Kind of. I'm feeling like an introvert now, to be honest.
Yeah.
And what he would have felt would have been 100. He would have been up to 100 the whole time. Because any normal person go, oh well, why don't you just, But it's so easy to say that when you're not. If you can only imagine. I couldn't even imagine how afraid he would have been.
Yeah.
And this is a person he's a member of Mensa. He's a super level-headed guy. He remembers at some point they were showing him images or scenarios in his mind, like almost he didn't understand some of them. Some of them were like, it was like he said, like conceptual art. So conceptual art's where the idea is more important than the image.
Yeah.
So it was kind of just like a strange, like they were like, well, what do you think of this? And he's just like, and he said that they kind of almost seemed frustrated that he wasn't understanding. And they showed him another image, and he just said, he just looked at them, and he didn't show any body language of being frustrated, but he could sense that they were kind of annoyed. You know what I mean? They were getting a little bit annoyed that he wasn't getting it. And then they showed him a scenario where human beings were essentially being farmed. There was some sort of farming situation going on where human beings, there was just rows and rows of human beings being farmed for everything they could get out of them. And they were grown and farmed and it was so horrific that it was like the Holocaust times a million. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it was like an abattoir of people. And he said that, you know, that really was disturbing, you know. He was showing, he understands, he understood that. And they were slightly more relieved that he understood that for whatever reason. Then they showed him other scenarios where in the future, that there was super wealthy, there would only be ultra wealthy and ultra poverty, where there was no middle. There was just, you were just super elite wealthy or nothing. And that time would come where that would happen on this earth. That's what he was showing. And he didn't know what to do with this information or why he was being shown this information. And then he remembers, I think from there, he just kind of woke up. And so he had wet the bed, which he hadn't done since he was, you know, a child.
Yeah.
My mom, he had wet the bed. And so something really did scare him. And I know my brother, you know, I know him. My brother's like my father because we never had a father. So to me, we had a really close connection, me and my brother. And so I understand him. I know everything about him. I know when he's lying. I know when he's telling the truth. And for him to say that really freaked me out. You know what I mean? And I believe him 100%. I believe that he believes that.
Yeah.
You know, what actually happened, I can't say. Maybe it was, I don't know. But I believe that he believes that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And I know,
The trust is there, right?
of course, 100%. You know,
Yeah.
I know my brother. You know, and I know what I saw, and it coincides with what happened to him. And it was because it was the same night. Sorry. And he so I mean that was it, you know, and that was pretty much it. And in my mom's experience, now she on this is the same night. She remembers waking up at 3 a.m, hearing like a death scream, like a shrill, high pitched death scream. And she believes that now that was my brother screaming when he was taken from his room. You know, I'm talking about a blood curdling,
Yeah.
it's that's going to end sort of scream. And this is coming from someone who's, you know, super educated. You wouldn't never scream like that, you know. And so she had heard him screaming. So with my mom, now why she didn't get up, I mean, any rational person, if they hear that, they're gonna check it out, right?
Right.
She didn't pick it up. She believes, she doesn't recall anything after hearing him screaming. She heard the scream. She vividly remembers hearing the screaming. But beyond that, it was morning. It was morning again for her. So she also has missing time. But she 100% heard the screaming at like 3 a.m. Yeah. And that was it. Yeah.
Okay. Super interesting.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thank you, man. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it really left its mark on all of it. I mean, my brother, he had serious panic attacks after that. He couldn't go into shopping malls or anywhere with bright light or a high ceiling. He couldn't go in there. He had to leave.
Yeah.
He would start hyperventilating, and I mean, it was real, you know. To this day, he still suffers from panic attacks. I still have panic attacks. My mom doesn't, because she doesn't really seem to, you know, she didn't see anything. She just heard the screaming. So Yeah. And it's funny that it happened at the same time that I was picked up by this murderer guy. It's just a coincidence, but it's the same, pretty much the same month that I was picked up by the
Yeah,
murderer guy. Yeah, which is interesting.
certainly is.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah, this happened in East Auckland, Howard, you mentioned?
this happened in East Mellons Bay
Mellons
or
Bay, okay.
Mellon. Yeah, Mellons Bay. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And obviously there's a long-term mental effects, but were there any physical effects that might have been long-term or short-term?
I didn't have anything physical on me that I knew of, but my brother had a small red dot uh, just under his belly button, where he did show me, and there was a red dot there, but it wasn't anything where you could say, I mean, it looked kind of like a rash or like a pump, so you couldn't indecisively say, oh, that's, you know, it was like just like a redness, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Okay.
He did show me he believes he had an implant put in him, but as far as if he followed up on that and went to see anyone about that, I have no idea. I mean, we both moved out of my mom's house at 18.
Yeah.
Sorry, he's 2 years older than me, so he moved out. I was 18 when I moved out, and we kind of went our separate ways for a number of years after that. So as far as him checking that out, I don't know. But he did show me, and there was a red mark under his belly button. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you notice any unusual smells when the creature came into the room or anything like that? Any unusual smells or any distinctive sounds that other than obviously seeing this creature? But is there anything else that was distinctive to that happening to you?
No, I would look, to be honest, I was so fixated on what I was seeing
Yeah.
that all of my other senses were totally cut off. I
Yeah.
was just
Yeah.
looking at this thing and I was just like, oh my God, you know what I mean? And for me, all of my energy was concentrated on this, if this thing is going to come towards me or not, basically. So I couldn't tell you that perhaps there was a smell or anything else, but I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
Yeah, there might have been. I have no idea.
And
Yeah.
in your own opinion, do you think it was friendly or hostile or just maybe a bit of both, but curious?
Well, I mean, it would be like, from my perspective, it would be like um, when a zoologist goes and takes an animal from its natural habitat. I would be the animal. You know what I mean? So the zoologist may just be trying to help the animal. I have no idea, but it was so far out of my understanding that I was just shocked from something so alien. I was just shocked from the image of that. I I couldn't tell you whether I don't. I mean, if it was that nefarious, I wouldn't probably be here right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I would have more. I'm guessing it wasn't, but it would be like me trying to teach a Labrador how to drive a manual
Yeah.
car. You know what I mean? Like, that's how different it was. Our energy was that different.
Makes a lot
You
of
know,
sense. Yeah.
it's just like, whoa. It really, even to this day, it just freaks me out. And I hadn't talked to anyone about that in 20 years. But for some reason, I had some time off from. I have a business. Sorry, I recently sold my business that I had for many years, and I've had some time off to relax. And something brought that memory back to me. I'd actually almost completely forgotten about it, really, but something had brought that back to me, and I thought that what, that did happen. You know what I mean? And that's when I started going on Facebook groups and reading other people's stories, paranormal experiences and things, and I decided to post my one up, which I was quite surprised. It had a lot of actually good good feedback on, and a
Yeah.
lot of people with similar experiences in that area, actually, in Howick, Pakuranga area, in
It's
that
actually really
time.
interesting. As I say,
Yeah,
I'm from Howick and Pakuranga, and just the
yeah,
amount of stories that are starting to come through, it's actually really incredible.
yeah. I mean, I was shocked to hear. I had over a dozen people message me and tell me that they had seen a light, a bright light. There's people, all kinds of experiences that they were in Howick and Midlands Bay, actually, in that area, and in the exact same time. So that kind of was good to. It felt good to. I didn't feel like I was so crazy. You know what I mean? To have other people say similar things at the same time.
Do you have
Yeah,
any even any inkling as to maybe why you were chosen, or
I
what makes you
really
stand
wish
up here?
I wish I wasn't, man. I really wish this never happened. I'm pretty sure my brother feels this. He would never tell anyone about it. And if anyone even brought up anything to him, he would just lie because um, he doesn't want to. To him, it's embarrassing, and it's. We both really wish this never happened. I wish it never happened. Yeah, maybe I was. I have no idea. My brother seems to believe that the other people that he saw were intelligent people.
Right.
So with his reasoning, he could feel that they were also like on his level of intelligence. He believes that they were taking intelligent people. They weren't taking like thugs or homeless people or people. Not that they aren't. Not to be discriminatory, but there was no one there that looked like rough or
Right.
ignorant. You know what I mean? They all looked like they were together, people that were well together. I mean, so he believes that for whatever reason they've taken high IQ people in his mind, without sounding too, you know, um,
I get it. Yep.
yeah,
Taking knowledgeable people.
yeah, that's what
Yeah.
he could fathom from that. I mean, he could be wrong. That's just his speculation. They look pretty intelligent to him, and yeah, and so I mean, we're both from working class areas. We're not. He's not. I mean, we both come from South Africa. Um, so we've worked our whole lives. We've not. I mean, he's obviously gone on to study, but I've just worked my whole life. So um, you know, we're just normal, regular people. Yeah, yeah. They. I mean, if I could just do like a shameless plug of my book, if that's all right.
Yeah. Go
We
ahead.
got so this Dissonant Realms that I've written, that it is fiction. I love, like I said before, I mean, I love paranormal stuff. It seems strange that it didn't happen to me and it happened to the person who doesn't love that stuff, because me and
Yep.
my brother are like total opposites, like right brain, left brain. That's how we are. So it seems weird that you would think it would happen to me. But anyway, like I love Clive Barker and Stephen King and
Yep.
H.P. Lovecraft. So I'm a huge, I wanted to take my hand at writing, and so I wrote this, and so you can get that at if you go to Epiphany Comics on Facebook.
Yep.
You can message me on there, and I can get the book for you if anyone
Yep.
wants a copy.
Send me
Yeah,
the
it's got
email and I'll post it with the video as well.
yeah, sure. I mean, it's got some of my experiences in the back of the book that I've had in my life, but the majority of the book is fiction. Yeah, fantasy horror fiction. Yeah.
Yep. So obviously your experience has influenced that a little bit. But has the experience sort of changed your worldview on how you make decisions and how you view, maybe religion and politics and that sort of thing?
Um, no, I really try not to let it affect who I am as a person. Like we don't wake up in the morning and go, I was abducted by alien. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
like I don't allow it to define me. It's just we look at it as something that's just happened, and we can't explain it, so we don't try to. It whatever it was happened, and we've really just moved on. I mean, I every now and again I kind of remember when if I watch a horror movie or if I hear somebody else's experience, I'll kind of remember it. But other than that, yeah, we really don't. It hasn't really seeped into our lives in any other way, really, to be honest. Yeah. Um, I mean, it's just sheer terror. It's really just sheer horror, really, the whole thing for me anyway. And that's all it was. Yeah. I mean, I thought, for a moment, I thought I was going to die. I mean, that my heart was going to explode. If this thing, I said, if this thing comes any closer to me, my heart's going to explode. That was the level I was on. And I
Well, I mean,
think,
any kind of intruder in your bedroom, let alone something that you can't really
oh,
explain, and
yeah,
just by the look of it.
100%. I wish it was a normal intruder because then I could explain it.
Yeah,
But I mean, it definitely wasn't human from what I could recall. And as soon as I could see that, that took it to a whole new level. Um, and the fact that I can't remember, whatever they've given me to forget worked because I can't. If I'm assuming if they've given me something to forget, or whether I actually just passed out from fear, it could have been one of the either. But whatever they've given me worked, and whatever they gave my brother didn't work because he recalled everything, and even years later recalled more and more. Actually, with my mom, all she's ever been able to recall is the screaming,
yeah,
and she's never been able to explain why she didn't get out of bed and have a look. Um, she's just never been able to explain that, but she 100% heard the screaming. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, and that's yeah. I mean, it's really yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, look, I think that's all of my questions for you as well. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we close off?
Um, I think. I mean, I understand like how. I mean, people are so quick to like there are a lot of people out there that are just mentally unwell or they are fanciful people just making stuff up. But that shouldn't take away from legitimate experiences that people do have. And I think it's important to to sift through and really, I mean, like, because there's so much crap out there, and then there's some that you can go, okay, maybe there is something in this, you know, and I think I'm just grateful there's people like you out there that are actually looking into things like that because there are some legitimate things out there, So that's all I was going to say is that I'm grateful that there is someone who is looking into the cases and doing that work. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing your story. And from my perspective, doesn't matter what I believe, it's real to the individual. And
Yeah,
in the place that it's your mum and your brother as well. Um,
yeah,
and I can clearly see that this is real for you. Um, and I fully appreciate the fact that the biggest problem with the paranormal and ghost stories and abduction stories is trying to convince others without feeling like you're being judged, or obviously you get labeled or feel the stigma of being crazy at the same time. But the
yeah,
difficult thing is trying to convince everybody else. And
yeah,
unfortunately, no one else really understands a paranormal experience until they've had one themselves.
100%. Yeah,
Yeah, and I really
100%.
appreciate your bravery, obviously coming in, and it's obviously hasn't been easy for you to share your story, but I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. It was pretty difficult. I don't know why. I was very calm before, but it kind of brought like a lot of nerves back for some reason. So I apologize. I don't
Totally
know why.
fine. Yeah,
But I appreciate that, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, I mean, like I said, I appreciate you sharing your story, and I hope we can keep in touch and send us the link to your book, and we'll share it with the video as well.
Awesome,
And
man. We'll do.
yeah, keep in touch.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.